Hi everybody, welcome to Missy's Imaginings. I hope you're doing great. I hope you're making it through this hot summer that we're having. This is very abnormal for us to have this hot of weather in July. Usually it doesn't come until like August. So yeah, you can hear my AC is running to keep it kind of cool in here. And for a little bit we have the window open for some lighting, but I've been trying to keep it really dark in here to help keep the heat away. But it's doing better. We're now cooled down to the mid 80s. So very thankful for that. The other day I was coming home from work and it was 108 degrees, and that is not normal for where we are. And so yeah, my refrigerator was going crazy. The ACs could not keep up at all. So yes, we're very thankful that we're down to the manageable 85, 86s. So, oh my goodness. So I hope you're surviving. I hope you're doing well. We have a project that has started. I talked about it a little bit in showing what the designs are going to be, what my fabric choices are. The third scale size is complete and posted on the website. So that was the first post. And just again, for a warning, it's 42 pages of pieces. So if you want to print that out, be prepared. It's going to use a lot of paper and consequently a lot of ink. It's a lot of pages to print. Sometimes, depending on sales and stuff like that, it might be more economical if you save the file to like a flash drive and then take it to like an office supply store if they're having like, you know, back to school sales for printing, and print it out on one of their machines. You just plug in your flash drive to the copy machine and print from there rather than using up like all your ink. So anyway, I just thought that might be a more economical way to print out something that's going to take this much. So hopefully that's a helpful suggestion. The other two sizes that people had requested, of course, were the quarter scale and then the 6th scale. And at first, my brain, I apologize, my brain just does not connect things automatically sometimes. And so when people were suggesting, well, we need it in the 6th scale, and I was thinking, oh, well, that's an interesting, and then oh yeah, because the Mattel BTS guys are in 6th scale. So sorry that it took me a while, but because that set of dolls is like everywhere now and it's easily accessible, so I know a lot of people have them, I did that scale next. I did the 6th scale. So in order to get it down to that size, just so that you're prepared, the pattern pieces might look a little bit less crisp because on the machine that I had to use, I couldn't go right from this scale to this scale because the selections didn't match correctly on my options, and it did not have the option to like type in, I want to go this percent. There were just certain percentages that I had to choose from. So what I did is I first went to the quarter scale and reduced that. Then I was able to reduce the quarter scale down to the 6th scale. But that means it's like the 3rd generation image from the original. So we have the 1st generation, 2nd generation, 3rd generation image, which reduces clarity. But I think you can still see it well enough, and then all the writing that I put on the pattern pieces, I actually typed it in on the computer so it would be legible, because trying to reduce from this size to this that many times, you can't read it anymore. So hopefully you'll be able to see the edges clearly enough, and then the typing is all legible. Also, if you've already looked on the website, the large scale, 3rd scale for this size doll has images of the designs on all the different coats, so that you know you have the right pieces for that design. These are too small to do that, so on the larger pieces it will have the image of the design you're making, but the rest will just have a color-coded dot. So that way you know if you're making J-Hope's red coat, then all the images that have a red dot would go for that design. If you want to make V's green blazer, then all the images would have a green dot for that design. So hopefully that will help in sorting, because there are so many pieces. So because my guys are the large 3rd scale, I did them first. Then I did the 6th scale, because that's the Mattel BTS guys are 6th scale size. So we'll put a picture of those guys there in case you're not familiar with them. And those you can get, I don't know if they're available in stores anymore, because they kind of sold out and then didn't restock a lot, but you can still get them like on Amazon, you can buy them, or on eBay, there's a lot of them available. So that size would fit this. So since those are now both on the website, I will continue to work and get the 1/4 scale collection done and put it on the website. Oh, and if you're printing out the 6th scale, don't be disheartened. That page collection is only 12, I think 12 or 13 pages. Because they're so small, I could get several on one sheet. So it's less paper the smaller you go. Okay, so that's what the information is on the patterns. The 1/4 scale version is coming. I just haven't got that far yet. Now, the next thing that I have been able to do is I have been able to cut out the entire collection. So all of J-Hope's garments are here. Suga's garments are done. Jimin's garments are cut out. V's garments are cut out. RM's garments are cut out. Jungkook's garments are cut out. And Jin's garments are all cut out. So everything is cut out and separated, just to give my brain a little bit more clarity. And what we're going to start with is, because it is the order of the spectrum, so we have red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and then we don't have indigo because we needed the pink. We talked about that in the earlier video. So I have everything cut out. We're going to go in order of the rainbow. So we're going to start with red, which will be J-Hope's outfit. He'll have the baseball, like Letterman style jacket, white pants, and then a red print shirt. So, and then I also have pieces cut out so that the facing of the coat will match the shirt. So that will be the first thing that we're going to sew. So we'll switch everything up, get the machine ready, and then we'll start on the red baseball jacket. Here we have all the pieces for the coat. So we have a faux leather red and a faux leather white fabric. So these will be the front pieces of the jacket. This will be the back of the jacket. The sleeves are white. Then the facing pieces are cut from the same fabric as the shirt. Then there's a white on white print for the pants. So we'll bring that up and see. I'm not sure if the print will show, but that's a white on white, kind of some floral kind of squiggly pattern. So that's the pants. Then the sleeve cuffs and collar and waistband are from this knit striped fabric that I've cut to the correct length. The edge of the cuff will be red, and here we go. I think once I get it folded, I may actually trim some of the white off, just so that I don't have such a long band from as far as the width. So from the cuff to where the sleeve comes, I don't want it to be this long. So I'll probably cut a little bit of this off so that it would only be like from my thumbnail up to the top for the cuff. I looked and looked and looked for smaller red and white stripes in a knit fabric, but this is all I could find at the store where I live. So this was kind of my only option. I did have the ribbon, but I just wanted this to be able to stretch to where I want it rather than try to gather the faux leather, because sometimes that doesn't look very well. So those are the cuffs, waistband, and collar. And then on the facing, originally I had the back facing and the front facing, and so the sleeves would not have any facing on the edge of the sleeves. But then I thought, well, maybe I'll go ahead and add that. So I added this piece myself. If you want to add a facing piece, all you'll have to do is take the sleeve and simply trace around the upper edge of the sleeve where it meets the neckline, and have it the same, come down the same length from the edge to the bottom as your other facing, and then just draw a curve on the bottom. And that's all I did to make this piece. It's just the edge of the sleeve at the neckline, and then made it curved so that it would fit for my facing. You don't have to do that, but I thought, well, for continuity's sake, I'll go ahead and add that piece. So I also have a zipper. This is a separating zipper. So that means on the end, let's take it out of our packaging here so you can see the difference. If you're not familiar, and I know people who sew a lot will say, well, yeah, we know. But in case there's somebody here who hasn't sewn a lot previously, a separating zipper is what you need for like a jacket, because when it comes down to the bottom, it does exactly what it says. It separates into two pieces. So that gives you the opening of your jacket, so your jacket will open. Most zippers for just normal clothing are not able to separate at the bottom. So that then would slide in here, put it back in, and then you can zip up your coat. So when you're using a separating zipper, this is the important end. So if you're going to cut to length on a separating zipper, you don't cut at the bottom. You always keep this little gizmo here at the bottom, because that's where you can actually link the zipper in and zip it up so that it will stay closed. So even if the zipper is too long, you can still use it, because we're going to fix our zipper at the bottom and sew towards the top, and then any excess that we don't need will be cut from the top of the zipper. So that way you keep this little gizmo. They're more expensive, but this is what you're paying extra for, is that little gizmo at the bottom. So there's probably a proper name for it. I don't know what it is. And there we go. So we have a zipper closure on our jacket. So the first thing I'm going to do, which many who are familiar with the channel will know, is I like to do my prep sewing, which means first of all I'm going to be putting the facings together. So this is the center back facing. Then we will be sewing on the shoulder facings here, and then the front facings, let's see, I got to make sure I have it correctly, will go here and here. And so the way you can tell is this is my shoulder, and you want the front edges then would wrap around to meet like this. So we're going to sew these together at the shoulder edges, and then I'm going to serge around the outside edge of the facing, because that edge will be exposed inside the garment. It won't be hidden anywhere. So I'm going to serge finish on an overlock machine the edges so that that will have a nice finished edge. You can also use a zigzag stitch to finish that, because you just don't want it to ravel. You can fold it over and hem if you like. That's perfectly fine. But just remember, on doll clothing especially, every time you add another layer of fabric, you add bulk to the garment. And so even though right here this would be very thin because it's a thin cotton, it would just be a little hem, that's still now going to be 2 layers of fabric. Then you're going to have the layers of the jacket, then you're going to have the layers of the shirt. So depending on how intricate you want your garments to be, that can help you decide how many layers you want to add. If it's just the jacket and a simple t-shirt, oh fine, you might want to go ahead and hem that. If you have this with a button-up shirt that also has facings in it, that's going to be more and more fabric you're adding. And on doll clothing, because it's such a small scale, that's going to add up real quickly. It's going to be lots of layers, lots of thickness, especially if you're sewing the 1/6 scale option. You want as little bulk as possible, because on those smaller dolls, it's just layers and layers of fabric. Then it becomes harder to get all the garments on, or for them to actually be able to move once the garments are on. So just kind of an overall view on that. So once the facing is ready, then I will go ahead and do the cuffs on the sleeves. So here are my, oh, that's the wrong one. Let me get a cuff here. So then I will fold this in half with the right, well first, yes, on the sleeves, I'll fold with the right side out. And because the sleeves edges are going to be sewn together, I don't have to worry about this edge of the fabric because it'll end up being sewn together. So I'm going to trim some of the white away. Then I will, let's make sure this is not layered so it's easier to see here. There we go. Then when I start sewing, I will turn so that my raw edges are together. I will anchor the fabric, so just a little bit to anchor it, and then I'm going to pull this fabric, the stretch fabric, to match the length of that seam, and then sew it as I'm stretching it, and then that will produce that natural pull back together once I release that. So I'm going to do that on both the sleeve cuffs, and then my cuff would look like this. So it'll have a red edge on the cuff when it's finished. So I'm going to do the cuffs on the sleeves, and then I will come back to the camera and we'll take a look at how all that looks. Here is the finished facing. So we have it all put together and the edges serged, so it's nice and finished all the way around. Then here are the sleeves. So the cuffs are all sewn on, and I did top stitch the seam allowance up towards the sleeve. So this is the end of what the sleeves will look like. So when they're sewn, it will look like this. So that's the end of the sleeves. So those are done. My next step is going to be to put the actual jacket pieces together. So to put these pieces together, we're going to connect the seam line that would be like the shoulder line. So we're going to start here, and for those of you who have been to the channel before, you'll kind of recognize this or remember it. But sometimes when you have curves that don't match, especially on doll clothing, because the seams aren't as long as people clothing, I prefer not to pin the pieces together because it's hard to get it to match and pin it together without any rumples. Plus, because I'm dealing with faux leather, if you put a pinhole in there, it's there, it's not coming out, and it's really hard to pin these and stay within a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So what I prefer doing is I'll start my seam, and here we're starting up at the neckline. So I'm going to start by putting the neckline edge up in the machine here, and I will go ahead and take a couple stitches and then back tack. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is, as I feed it into the machine, I'm going to bring these two edges together. So what happens essentially is that your machine thinks you're just sewing a straight line. So I'm coming in, and see, as I bring it in, I'm bringing these edges together rather than trying to get them together at the beginning. And my sleeve looks like it's a little bit wider, but that's okay. I'm going to give a little bit of stretch here, and then I can always trim that seam allowance just a little bit if I need to. So there we go. We can trim that out, and then I can go ahead and bring this in just a tad to make that match a little bit better. And so there I have that seam. And now, since I'm using a decorative red top stitch, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch that seam towards the sleeve. So let's go ahead and trim away our extra thread. There we go. And I'm going to push that seam allowance towards the sleeve. And the reason I'm doing that is I don't want to top stitch both edges. Well, you could, but I think I'm just going to top stitch it all towards the sleeve so that my top stitching will just be on the sleeve side. You can top stitch, like open the seam and top stitch both of them, but I'm just going to do the sleeve edge. So underneath, I'm making sure my seam allowance goes towards the sleeve, and it will be a little more bulky there, but I only want the top stitching on the white. There we go, and I'm kind of opening that seam as I go. And I'm not worrying about top stitching or back tacking because that's going to be caught in another seam when I put it together. So here we have the top edge that's going to look like this with my top stitching on the white. So there we go. So I'm going to do that all the way around. So my next item will be to put this edge to the back. Then I'll have the sleeve edge and then the front. So I will go all the way around connecting all those pieces and doing the top stitching, and then I'll come back to the camera. So now that I have everything put together, I found the center of my collar just for illustration. I'm going to turn the collar with right sides together and sew the ends shut, then flip it back so it's right side out. Then where this kind of dent is where I'm going to start the collar, because I want to make sure that I have enough room for when it turns in and it has the zipper and the facing on. So it'll start about here, so this would be a finished edge. There we go, and it would start and look about like this. And then I'm going to stretch that so that the center of my collar matches the center back of my coat, and then I'll go ahead to the other end. And when I sew this on, I'm going to try to stay inside the 1/4 inch seam allowance, because then the facing will go on as well. And then also I'll have to put the zipper in. So we'll come back to that after I get the collar in place. Now that the collar is on, I'm going to turn the coat inside out like so. There we go, there's the sleeve. And I'm going to sew from one cuff up to the underarm and down the side, and then on the other one from one cuff up to the underarm and down the side, and that will essentially kind of put the coat together. The reason I'm doing this is because I need to get the waistband on before I put the zipper in, because I want the zipper to go down also onto that waistband, but I can't put the waistband on until the coat is put together. So the next step, the collar's in, and now I'm going to do the sleeve, underarm, side seams, and then I'll go ahead and put the waistband on. So we'll get this much done and come back, and we'll do the waistband pretty much the same way we did the collar. I will be finishing the ends of the waistband as well, because the facing goes to the edge of the where it meets the waistband. It doesn't go all the way down. So I will be finishing the edge of the waistband, and then it will come in a little bit from the edge, like a 1/4 inch, so that that facing will then finish that off and it will meet up like that. So now that the jacket's put together, I'm ready to put the waistband on. I did put a pin in the tiny little seam allowance right at the center back to kind of help hold that, because it is going to be a significant stretch. But I'm going to go ahead, and this is finished, anchor that at the 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then go ahead and sew that on with the 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. And then once I get to the center back, then I'll pull this to the other edge. So I'm going to attach the waistband, and then it will be time to take care of the zipper and the facing. I now have the waistband on, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the bottom of my one side zipper with the slider. Here's the zipper pull slider, and I'm going to line up the bottom, not quite to the bottom of the waistband, because I want the waistband to have just a little bit of a lower edge than the zipper. So I'm going to line up this part with the edge, but not this part that's sewn, that gets sewn. So I'm going to line that up, and then I'm going to sew the edge of the zipper onto the front of the jacket. So I'll need to change to a zipper foot, and I'll line it up like this, and I'm going to sew the zipper onto the front of the jacket. So I'll be doing that to both sides to put the zipper in. Then once the zipper is in, it will fold back and I can attach it to the waistband, but then I can go ahead and put the facing on and enclose all this into the facing on the inside. So I'm not going to sew like right close to the edge, because that will happen when I put the facing in, but I'm just going to tack it in onto the front of the coat with a very narrow seam to get the zipper held in before I put the facing on. And I'll do that to both sides. So now, as I've come up the front, I'm going to come around the neckline. I want to double check and make sure that I'm not catching my collar in the front part. So let's see, I may have to go ahead and turn this. I don't want to back tack because I sometimes can't see where I'm going with the back tack. So I'm going to come back down a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and take that out of the machine. There we go. Okay, so now I can open this up to make sure that I'm catching the collar where I want to, so that it won't be caught too far in. So I'm double checking, and it looks like that's going to be okay. And I'm going to look back this way, pull this down a little bit, and I might go ahead and put a pin so I know where the edge of that collar is. There we go. Here and here. So it looks like my landing spot is going to be fine to go ahead and sew for the collar. So I'm going to put it back in the machine. There we go. And sink my needle right here. I'll do a couple stitches and back tack there, and then go ahead and pull that forward, and maybe my threads can help bring this There we go. And sink my needle. Okay, and now I'm ready to go around the edge of the neckline and then down the other side the same way. Alright, so now we have the lining sewn in. So let's flip it out and see how it looks. Hopefully it'll be okay. And I did trim just the corners because there's going to be a lot happening here. So we'll flip that one out and then flip this one out. Oh, and then also right here you can see there's like a big wonky thing here. So that was where, while I was sewing, it had to go around the zip pull. So once I got it anchored in, then I just moved the zip pull up here and then did in the very straight seam here, so I'd have a straight seam on my jacket. But it's hard to get around that zipper pull, and because it was inside the lining, I couldn't see where it was actually placed while I was sewing. So here we go. So here is going to be what the jacket looks like. We'll pull the sleeves in and turn them right side out as well. If I can get the cuff, there we go. So here we go. There's the cuff there. And we'll do the other sleeve. Okay. Turn this one right side out. There we go. Okay. Turn the jacket. All right, then the facing to the inside. So here again, the seam is going to go up towards the jacket, and then this seam went up towards the jacket as well. So when I wrap it around, then this will be finished on the facing. And now I'm just going to top stitch the waistband onto the zipper right here, so it will hold. So I'll top stitch this, then I'll go around the base hemline of the jacket, top stitching this seam allowance up towards the jacket, and then the facing will go here, and the same thing will happen on this side, and then the facing will be inside the jacket like this. Push that down, and then I will probably sew around the neckline as well to sew that seam allowance down away from the collar. Then here is what our jacket will look like, and voila, there we go. So here's going to be our red jacket. So I just have to finish up around the hemline, get the zipper sewn onto that waistband so it will go all the way down like so, and then our facing holds that in place. Optionally, I may go ahead and top stitch the front of the jacket, but I'm not decided yet if I want to top stitch the front. But I will around the hemline and around the neckline just to hold those seam allowances in place. And once those are in place, I will also tack down the facing, matching the seam lines, tack the facing inside and tack it down, because that helps hold that in place as well. So the facing will be tacked down, and then with that seam allowance sewn down, it'll help hold that down as well, so that facing won't be popping up all the time. So there we go. So we'll do that. So that will finish out the jacket, and I am happy with how this neckline fabric will look in there, giving the stretch. I think it'll be okay. And yeah, so that'll finish out our jacket. Here's the back, and that will finish out this and get this garment done, and then we'll need to do the shirt and pants for this outfit. And here is the finished coat. So we have everything all done, and the zipper in. Here's the back, the top stitching's done, and then we'll unzip just to show when you go ahead and tack down that facing, how well it helps keep everything in place and keeps everything where you want it. And then the top stitching around the neckline as well helps with that immensely. So that is the jacket for the red coat. Then we have the shirt, which is the loose fitted t-shirt. So what we're going to do to put this together, it's really simple, is first I will put the shoulders together, so the front and back shoulders together. Then I will serge and hem the sleeves, and if you fold the sleeve in half, you can, let's see, get it to match there, then make a small notch right there. Then this little notch will match up to the seam on the shoulder, so then all you do is sew up to the seam, then bring it down and sew it here, and that puts the sleeves in. Then once the sleeves are in with right sides together, you just go from the end of the sleeve to the underarm and down. These edges here will also be serged, and then when I sew the back together, I'll kind of come and we'll talk about that. But first we'll do the shoulders and get the sleeves on, and then we'll go ahead and serge the back seams so that that's a finished edge of fabric, and then we'll come back and take a look. Now with the sleeves on, before I go ahead and do the underarm and side seams, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to top stitch or stay stitch around the neckline so that I can trim just a straight little cut to kind of open that up, and then I'm going to use some red bias tape to finish off the edge of the shirt. So I will trim a little bit so that it's not quite as high, because my seam allowance would be here on the finished garment, and so I want to lower that down a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish that off with red bias tape. Then when I do the back, I will sew just the edge of the back like this. Because this is non-stretch fabric, I don't want to sew the back closed, because it would be really hard to get it on the doll because there's no stretch. So I will go ahead and just sew this, finish this edge, and then use snap closure on the back, so it can just be like feed it from the front and snap in the back. So once I have this done, and then I will stay stitch around the neckline, then do the side and arm seams and hem it. That's all we need to do to finish up this shirt. is the simple loose t-shirt. So it has a little bit bigger sleeves, a little bit wider around the body part, and because it's a non-stretch fabric, it will go on the doll from the front, and then we just use simple snap closures for the back. So we'll just snap, so we have 4 snaps here, and there it's all closed up, so that closes up the back. So that's just an easy way to use this shirt pattern if you want a t-shirt look, but you want to have a print or design that's on a cotton fabric. So we have our coat and then our shirt. Let's see, I'll just lay this inside here. Alright, so that'll look like that. There we go. So our facing and the coat matches the shirt. So there's that part. Now we have the pants to do. So I have lots of videos on making pants, and yeah, there's a lot of them. But this pair does have a little bit different shape on the edge of the pocket, so it is a little bit different, and it does have pleats. So here we have 2 pleats that are very tiny. I don't know if the red will show up there. So we take one red and overlap it to the other red line, and then one overlap that one. So we have the pleats on the front. I generally like to make the pleats go towards the pocket. So if we fold this with a pin, it's kind of maybe easier to see. So if we take a pin here and then into the next one, and then use that as just fold on the edge of the pin. And this fabric has got like a weird, the design is like a print onto it, so it's kind of stiff. So there's one. Then we take another pin, take the next line here, and go to this line. Make that pleat as well on the pin. Kind of straighten it up. There we go. They are very small pleats. Alright, and put that one down. Okay, so then from the front, it will have 2 small pleats, like so. And they'll be really close together. It'll look like this. There. So hopefully that will show up. So those pleats, I usually like to get my pleats laid in, and I like to just do a stay stitch over the top to hold them in place. So that's what the front pleats will look like. I usually serge the edge of the fly. One will be flat and then the other will fold back once it's sewn, but I like to finish that edge because it is exposed in the pants. To do the pockets, we take the right sides and sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam. Then I trim away the seam allowance, and then I go ahead and when I fold it back, then I top stitch it, and then this side comes and folds back to create the side of the pant. So that's how you make the pockets. So this part is in a lot of videos to make pants, and I'll try to remember and link it below on making the pants, but I just have so many that I'll say that much. And then once the pockets are in, then the crotch seam is usually, I'll sew the crotch seam and then do a zigzag stitch to finish that, and then the back seam, the center back seam, I will sew and serge to finish that. Then I sew the sides of the fronts to the sides of the backs and hem it. Once you get the sides of front and back put together, then hem the pants, then sew the inseam, then put on the waistband. It's pretty simple, and like I say, there's other videos. So I'll go ahead and get these pants done, and then we'll take a look at how the finished product turns out. So here we have the pleats in both sides of the front, the pockets put in, and then the crotch seam is done with a zigzag to reinforce that and keep that edge safe. So now, because it's a male set of pants, the left side will overlap the right side. So that is going to be folded just as a straight line up from the center seam. And then this one will just be left as is so that there's overlap behind the fly. That way, if this gaps a little bit, there's fabric that will make sure it's not just pulling apart and opening. So there's fabric to back that. So that's what the front will look like. So now on the back, we'll just do that center back seam and serge that seam, open those up, then put the pants together at the side seams, hem the legs, then we flip it so right sides are together and we sew the inseam and then put the waistband on last. Also, I have not put the dart markings on the back just because I usually like to actually put these on the doll before I do the waistband and see how the fit is, and then I add the darts when it's on the doll. So there would be a dart here, then I go ahead and I fit that to the doll, take the pants off the doll, sew in the darts, and then I put the waistband on. Because once you have the darts in, if they don't fit right, there's not a real easy way to make them smaller or larger. But if I fit the dart to the doll before I put the waistband on, then I know it's going to be a good fit. So that's my next steps to finish up the pair of pants. The last little hint, when I'm putting on a waistband, I sewed the waistband on right sides together. Then what I do to do the waistband, because I want the end to be finished, is I will take the inside of the waistband and I'll fold a 1/4 inch seam on the raw edge. So I'll fold that in. Then I line up that folded edge with the seam on the good side of the pants. Just like this. So it kind of makes an accordion fold there. But then what I'll do is I'm going to sew the edge of that waistband right at the edge of the fly, that fabric right there. Sorry, my voice is getting kind of scary. So we'll put it in the machine here. Line it up. And I'm just going to sew from one side down and then back tack it. And then take it out. And this is why I always make my waistbands a little bit longer, because I know I'm just going to trim off what I don't need. So when the waistband's a little longer, don't worry about that. So now what I can do is I can fold this little tab in towards the inside of the pants, and now I can flip that waistband to the inside. I'll get the little corner out, and I have a nice finished corner for the edge of the waistband. So now I'll just continue turning that 1/4 inch over, and so now it's ready to go ahead and hand stitch, or you can machine stitch, either one. I may go ahead and machine stitch this just because it has a more narrow waistband, so the top stitching wouldn't look very odd. But then you have a nice finished end that's not hanging out too far from the edge of the fabric. Sometimes that's hard to do when you're just trying to fold fabric to fit, and I've already done it on this end as well. So here again, I can take that tab, fold it to the inside of the pants, then just flip that out, and then continue turning that 1/4 inch seam allowance under. There we go. And then it's ready to stitch in place, and there we go. Now we have a nice finished corners on the edge of our waistband, so it's ready to overlap from the left and put our snap on. So there we go, and that finishes up the front of the pants. I do need to stitch the waistband, the inside of the waistband in place, but then that just folds over. So this double pleated pair of pants has very tiny narrow pleats, and it has a more narrow waistband. I just tried to come up with some things that were just a little bit different than other patterns that are already on the website, so you get a little bit of variety. The darts in the back on my particular doll ended up being 1/4 inch, and so yeah, so that finishes up the pair of pants, and that finishes up the waistband. So then these are going to be done once I go ahead and finish the inside and then put snap on, and there we go, our pants will be finished. And here is the finished project. So we have the jacket with the zipper, the t-shirt, and the pants, and then he has some lovely black and red and white Air Nikes, so that's kind of fun. So there we go. So there is the finished outfit for the first outfit in the 7 Coats, 7 Colors collections. So this is J-Hope's outfit in red. So next coming up will be orange, and I'll see you then. Bye!